Focus. Hey treasures, welcome back to my channel. The sun is really pissing me off, but it won't go down, and I don't want to wait because I'm all made up, and I did my makeup from, like, if you saw my video of hooking up with my brother's best friend, I did the same makeup because I'm like, this is cute, and I have my hair the same way because, yeah. So I'm gonna be telling you guys the finale of Bloodlines. I know. Honestly, it makes me really mad because I'm probably gonna use the same pictures that I used in the first one because I just like this. No, like absolutely not. I cannot have this color, but I didn't want to wear black and my makeup was pink, so yeah. So in this video, I'm going to be giving you guys the tea. I'm going to be breaking some shit down that happens in this book, and I'm going to be telling you guys what I thought at the time of when I read this book when it first came out, because this is like a major throwback. This came out more than 10 years ago. Yeah, no. A little less than 10 years ago. So it's a long time, and I've changed a lot, and my opinions changed a lot. So if you guys want to know the finale of what I thought about this book and what is a soon-to-be series, then let's carry on. So like I said in the first one, if you haven't seen my premiere for this book, I will have it up here. But anyways, this book is about Adrian Ivashkov and Sydney Sage. Adrian, Sydney, you get it. And they're both set to go to Palm Springs to keep the identity of where Jill, Lisa Dragamore's sister, is, to make sure that she's safe and doesn't get assassinated until the law is broken. If you don't know what I'm talking about, read the book. No, I'm joking. But Lisa Dragamore is the queen of the Moroi, and this backstory all goes back into the Vampire Academy books. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, I can't explain everything in this because I'm not even talking about those books, so I can't put everything into this video. Otherwise, it'd be like an hour long, and who's got time for that? But she needs Jill safe, and so they had to hide her in Palm Springs. And so Sydney, the alchemist, gets put in charge of making sure everything goes sound, and Adrian ends up needing to go because him and Jill have a bond. And that bond is called what, children? Being shadow kissed. So because Adrian saved Jill's life, they are now shadow kissed, and they have to strengthen that bond, so he has to go with her. And also they thought it would be healthy for him to get over Rose. Again, read Vampire Academy if you don't know what I'm talking about. Now, Adrian enters this book and he's heartbroken, and from what we last saw of Adrian, we know why completely. I feel like this book was made for the people that felt for Adrian and the people that are Adrians in this world. And so it was nice that Richelle did that. I'm like, I know her. It was nice that Richelle did that for everybody. At the same time, I feel like this book made me kind of question Adrian a lot, in the sense of he, you know, was so in tune with Rose and wanted Rose so badly. And sure, he was blinded on the fact that they could, like, seriously probably never work. But at the same time, like, Adrian is a fool for love, so he would have made it work regardless of how Moroi and Dampire relationships work in their world. But I didn't so much as like, because it felt like he fell for Sydney really, really fast. And I know they had to expedite some time in this, but it was just like, to me, this book didn't show enough of why he fell for Sydney so fast, if that makes any sense. Like, you know that they're gonna be put together. You know that Richelle did a lot of groundwork on making sure, like, all these situations that happened, it'd be them two together. And it felt like it was natural. It didn't feel like she was kind of like putting you in situations where you're like, that would never fucking happen. You're not doing a good job of making this be realistic. I feel like she did a really, really good job. However, to me, I just didn't like, this lighting is pissing me off once. Okay. However, to me, I just didn't really feel like I got their bond right away. Like, I kind of like expedited this, and I've read already, I'm at the 4th book, so, and there's 6 of them, so I'm like going off of like what I know from those ones. I need to get like those ones out of my head because we're not talking about those right now. But I feel like there is instances where it'd be Adrian knew Sydney, you know, and he knew her, he understood her, and she understood him, vice versa. But I feel like there was a lot of, oh, she understands me better, he understands me like no one else ever has. But I don't even think that that's actually the case in the instance of Adrian understanding Sydney more than anyone else, like more than anybody else to talk about Sydney's dad. Sydney's father is an asshole. I can't say it in any other way. He is the type of father that is going to give you a lot of insecurities to like work on, and he's the type of father that you're never going to get praise from. He's the type of father that pretty much you are going to be either learning to live with the fact that your father thinks this way, it's absurd, and screw him, or you're going to be trying your entire life to feel like you've accomplished something because he's made you feel like you've accomplished nothing. And you either go one or the other. Sorry, I have like my notes on my phone. Anyway, so you either go one or the other. And he gave Sydney something really, really terrible. He told Sydney pretty much that she needed to be more in control with her weight. This book does talk a lot about body dysmorphia, and I kind of like that Richelle put that in there because, I mean, as much as it's a vampire book, you know, vampire books don't typically make vampires have these like human problems, but I like that they put that in this book because regardless of it being like a fantasy type of book, obviously vampires, she made it realistic and added the human element, like humans are in this story, and added the human element, you know what I'm saying? And so I like that they did that. However, I don't find it that it's like it's really ever solved. Like, of course it's not going to be solved in the first book, but I feel like bringing up that issue for it to be ever resolved in the book, because it needs to be, but it's like it's talked about, but then it just like is swept under the rug, and it's like, okay, well, you have this, work on it. Okay, let's talk about saving the world now. It was like, didn't even have a place in this book if it could not get the attention that it needed. It was talked about, sure, but it was the way that it was dealt with later on. You'll see that in the other one. It's just like, I don't really know. Now, let's go into Adrian's life. So Adrian has this obsession with Rose, and that's how he enters the book. He's obsessed with Rose. He's super heartbroken. You can see it on his face. It's in his eyes. It's everywhere. It's a quality. It's a cloud constantly over his head. Now, as Sydney gets closer to him and she gets over the fact that she no longer thinks of vampires in this terrible light that the alchemists have put them in and sees them as like, okay, they're people too, she kind of becomes like a friend to Adrian. And like I said, the situations that they were put in seemed like it was natural, but their chemistry seemed like it was almost, like, I feel the relationship on Adrian's perspective. I don't feel it necessarily on Sydney's perspective. And maybe that's my problem with this, but like maybe that's my one problem, because obviously when I was younger reading this, I have a whole library in my room now, you know, and I was like obsessed with like Richelle's writing, so I didn't really look at certain things, but it was just like, I don't see Sydney like necessarily, I don't know, I feel like it was forced. Like, I feel like you tell me that they're gonna be in a good relationship, you tell me that they both are gonna love each other the exact same, I don't feel like it's possible. I feel like Adrian is always gonna like outlove her, because I feel like she doesn't actually need him. Like, she has him and it's great, but it's like if she didn't have her father, then like Adrian wouldn't even matter to her. That's kind of like harsh, but yeah. So let's go into Jill Mastriano. So Jill is 15, and like I said, she is shot a kiss to Adrian. She, you know, has Lisa Dragmore as her sister. However, their bond is not the greatest, and that is all in the Vampire Academy series. I can't talk about that, but she comes to the school and she has, you know, Adrian. Like, Adrian always liked her, so that's fine. Like, their bond is just going to be stronger, and they have always had like a brother-sister relationship, so that's great. Then we have like Eddie Castile, and Eddie develops a crush on Jill, and Jill is going to this new school, and for some reason she is not put in the best light, and the people at the school don't really embrace her. And so she's having like a tough time staying in Palm Springs. Not to mention, Moroi aren't really good with the sun. They can handle it, but they get drained really fast. So Palm Springs wasn't the best, but whatever. And so we have Jill going to this house of another Moroi vampire who has a feeder. So they go there I think twice a week, I believe, so that Jill can get blood and Adrian can get blood, and then they can have like this like actually like be themselves type thing. And so she starts dating Clarence's son, and Clarence is the Moroi vampire. So Jill and Lee, I don't really understand this relationship being put in the book, because honestly it kind of grosses me out in the sense of it being like, he's so much older and she's 15. Like I believe he's like 19. I believe so. Like, he's up, like, he's not like up there, like he's like 60, but I don't know, like I actually like have goosebumps. But he's older, and you can tell in just the way that they act, like he's fucking older. So I don't really like the fact that Richelle decided to put that in the book of Jill dating him, and it was like they, like, even Sydney felt like it was weird, but she was like, okay, got, you know, consoled by everybody else, and like, what?
I thought that was you.
Of course. Oh. Getting consoled to let Jill go and date him, but it was creepy because why on earth would that be okay? I don't know. This whole like age difference stuff is so tricky and so controversial in certain ways, but I just think like 15 is way too young. Of course, there's only the 4-year age gap, and it's different whenever you're 18 and then after. I mean, not even really. I feel like it's different when you're 20 and then after, but before then, like, I don't really like it. Speaking of someone that's dated someone that was like 7 years older and 9 years older, I shouldn't be talking, but it's just like, no, it's weird. It's weird for a guy to be looking at, like, there's only one reason why a guy would be looking at a girl like that. So, and there's that much of an age difference, and like your maturity should be different. So I think it's weird. So let's carry on with the story. So later on, you know, Jill develops this relationship with Lee. Eddie is a little bit jealous because he has at this point developed a crush on Jill, and Cindy is pretty much trying to make sure that she can get a little bit more comfortable. And she also starts working with a teacher who tells her that she has this sense about her, and it's about magic. However, the alchemists don't believe that humans should bear magic at all. So Cindy has like a lot of like morals that are being called into question with this job, and I believe it's like Richelle is a mastermind of making sure the book flows and making sure the book can carry on, you know what I mean? Like, this book was the first one, but like if you read it right away because you're like, oh, it's Richelle, and you'd be like, okay, I can see this going like 10 books later, you know what I'm saying? Because she can just like put all these like little bits of like pieces that need to be connected later on, and you could do that in one book or you could do that in 5. I think that the concepts in this book were great. I don't like the fact that it was like, okay, she has all these different morals, whatever, and she has to constantly be like, it's like stand at attention to figure out how she's gonna like deal with these things, and like slowly but surely her resolve is dwindling down from what she believed in for the alchemists and what she actually thinks now that she's surrounded by, you know, these vampires. I obviously, in every single book, the main character needs to change in some way. The main character needs to go through trials and tribulations. However, I wanted it to be a bit more believable because I wanted Sydney to have to confront them. Like, every single time it seemed like she was going to confront something, it was like, okay, you're on to the next chapter, and then the settings change, and you're like, okay, so what the fuck? Like, a lot, and that happens a lot. Like, I know that's just to keep you reading and stuff like that, but then it never gets picked back up again, and like, that's so fucking annoying, because it's like, every single chapter in a book is like, okay, there's something that happens for you to end a chapter, something needs to be resolved, and it's like, you're opening up a new thing, but like, even in that chapter, it doesn't go back to the other one, you know what I mean, that needs to be resolved. So like, you're constantly going through the book to continue, and yes, it's a good marketing ploy to keep you reading the book and shit, but at the same time, like, I wanted some benefit from me, like, I wanted some reward for me to like carry on, and like, I feel like you don't necessarily get that. I feel like you leave the book with like still a bunch of questions. Like, you go into the book and you don't have questions at all because you don't know Sydney, and you're like, okay, well, I care about Adrian, so I'm gonna read it. But then you leave the book and you're like, I have a billion questions, and it never really gets answered until like the last book ever. And so you're like, what the fuck? Like, I got no, maybe that's a little bit harsh, but I didn't get the rewards that I wanted. Like, they resolved the big conflict with the Strigoi, they resolved the conflict with Lee, and all that shit, but it was just like, what the fuck? And then on top of that too, I don't know how Strigoi operate, because they don't necessarily put a lot of emphasis on like the relationships that the Strigoi have. However, when they do talk about the relationships that Strigoi have, it's mostly just like whoever is gonna be the most powerful. So they have like subjects and stuff like that. At least they did whenever Dimitri was a Strigoi. Again, Vampire Academy. So Lee wanting to turn back into a Strigoi, because he used to be one, and then some spirit person changed him, and he wanted to turn back. He was still planning on keeping Jill and like having a relationship with her, and he was gonna turn her eventually, and it was gonna be like some like Strigoi love story. And it was like, well, what the fuck? He knew what it was like, felt like to be a Strigoi, obviously, and they all say that they're like completely devoid of emotions. You're pretty much super, super empty. And so why would he want, like, and he's felt that before, so why would he want to be Strigoi and have a lover at the same time, knowing he wasn't gonna feel the same about her? Because like, if you have no emotions anymore, you're not gonna feel love anymore, you're not gonna feel, I don't really understand that. I don't understand like Richelle being putting that in there. It kind of just is like a disconnect for me, and it made me question were some things even like fully thought through, because that just did not make any sense to me. Aftermath. I read reviews on this book, obviously while I was like getting ready to like film this, and some people had like said that they loved it. Some people said that it wasn't as good as Vampire Academy, and I don't know if it's as good as Vampire Academy or not. I haven't read Vampire Academy in a long time. I don't know if I would ever go back to reading it, because frankly, I can't fucking stand Lisa. Rose is cool to me. I love Christian. I loved, fuck, what was his name? I forgot his name. I think it was, oh fuck, I don't remember his name, but Eddie's best friend. I loved him, but I fucking can't. Like, so who knows, but yes. So I read reviews on this, and it was pretty much like people were telling me, most people said that they loved the book, don't get me wrong, and again, like, I love this series. Do I love it? Like, yeah, like I did at a point in time. Now reading it as an adult, I'm finding all of these flaws, and it's kind of making me like take it aback, but I love this whenever it was for my age group, because it says 12 to 17, and so people were just saying like they didn't find Sydney's story like that interesting, and I wouldn't say that wasn't interesting. I would just say that there is like a lot of missing pieces to it, and I would say that like vampires are talked about. You know, we have this teacher that's bringing up the fact that Sydney is like a witch, but then like, why doesn't vampires ever talk about witches? Like, and they don't talk about werewolves either. And like, I get that like Richelle probably just didn't want that. Like, she didn't want those other aspects to be like brought into it, but it seems like it's always fucking brought into it. So it's just like, you talked about witches, but I don't care that you avoided wolves, which is my thing. I love wolves, but you brought in witches, and like, it was like a secret. Like, witches knew about vampires, but like vampires didn't really know about witches, because Adrian was super, super shocked and like was like, what the fuck? So I don't know, like, why wouldn't that be talked about? And, like, I don't know, I feel like it opened up a whole new thing of, like, questions, again, not fucking answered, like, not answered, like, what am I getting for reading this book? So I can understand why that person says, like, it's not that interesting, and like she said, like, it does not satisfy enough. I understand completely, because, like, there's no reward for, like, continuing to read this. And then let's go to another one. So there's another person she talked about in, like, final thoughts and shit, and she said this was probably one of the worst in the series of, like, Richelle Mead, and just, like, the plot was fine, the characters seemed off. I don't really necessarily know if the characters seemed off to me. I don't know if she wrote Adrian like that on purpose because of the fact that he had, like, spirit, and, like, they could easily, like, whenever it was shit that didn't make sense, Richelle could easily fall back on the fact that, like, spirit is supposed to make you crazy and can, like, put shit in there to make it be questionable and make the story keep going, essentially. I don't know if she did that for that reason, obviously. She does talk about, too, this person does talk about the eating disorder in this, or the body dysmorphia and all that stuff. And like I said, I don't mind that it's in there. I mind that they, like, would talk about it and then, like, put it on the shelf, and you get the resolve, like, way later on, you know what I mean? Like I said, I'm reading into the 4th book now. I haven't really started it yet because I'm reminded how much I don't like it. The 5th book, sorry. I'm reminded how much I don't like it. So, yeah, but I don't know why, like, it wasn't talked about properly, and it could have easily been something where it's super addressed, and it's not super addressed in this. And I understand, like, there's so many other things that Richelle could have done with this, but at the same time, it's for ages 12 and 17, obviously female, like, don't fucking come for me, but obviously female, and females go through that shit, and, like, to say, like, to have someone just be like, okay, she has this issue, we're gonna bring it up, we're gonna talk about it later, and then that's for another time, I guess, me carrying on with, like, how they talk about it, but I don't feel like it's addressed properly. So, like, why put it in the story if you're not going to address it properly? Why put it in the story if you're not going to use it as a tool, as an engine to help these 12 to 17-year-olds that this book is supposedly for? I just think that the characters aren't necessarily off to me. How do I put this? It seemed like it was on brand for them, for how they acted and everything like that. I do think situations were pushed together that I don't necessarily know how, if I would have done it like that, based off of, like, what these characters told to me when I'd be, like, the writer in the situation. I don't know, man. And also, too, let's just talk about likability for people. Likability for Sydney in the beginning, not very likable. Like, we understand that she comes from this background and whatever, but it was like, of course they're freaking people. I mean, you learned later on how tough the alchemists are, but I don't know. Okay, so Sydney, not that likable. Adrian, heartbroken, annoying. You went out with Rose for what? Like, a month? Like, until she had to leave? Like, 3 months? Like, not that long for you to be super, super heartbroken. And again, you like Adrian because he was, like, the witty, sarcastic guy, like, hot, older guy. And then in this book, you see that he's, like, the super, like, emotional, clingy, desperate guy. And I don't like that turn. I'm not attracted to that in real life. And as much as they're saying that he's super good looking and stuff like that, he's not acting like it. And I like guys that are confident, and he's not. Adrian's likability to me, I don't, like, again, not so much. And then let's go to Eddie. Eddie's likability, probably the highest in this entire thing because he's barely freaking in it. But then he drives you nuts because he likes Jill but thinks that she's too good for him, so he won't go there. But again, understandable background. Dampers and Maroys don't mess together, especially when it's a Maroy female and a Damper gentleman. So again, you're hung up on society's, like, what society tells you. He's likable, sure, fine, kind of. And then we have Angeline. Angeline, to me, is the most likable in the book. She's not in it, like, right at the very beginning, but Angeline is the most likable character probably in this. You know what? That's not true. I do really, really like Trey. I do like Trey, but he's not really in it. Like, yeah. Jill, I can't stand Jill. you know, seems like a sweet girl and everything. Not for me, not my cup of tea. Not a bitch I'd fuck with. Like, I don't think, that's the thing too, like, none of these characters are that likable to me, and so I get that person saying, like, character seemed off, but, like, maybe you just didn't fuck with them, because I definitely, like, can't see myself, like, with really, like, anybody, like, reading this series, like, you're just gonna be like, okay, I want to see what happens, and I want to see them get together, because, again, like I said, obviously you know that these two are gonna get together. However, I just don't think you're gonna read this because you're like, oh, this is, like, super in-depth, like, this is, like, such a great, like, life lesson, like, this is fantastic, like, no, that's not what's gonna happen here. Anyways, guys, I hope my, like, mixed review was good for you. I will carry on into the next book because I do want to see this series through. However, I think I'm gonna give this, like, a little bit of like a break, and we'll see what happens next month. I'm not really too sure on the book that I'm sold on for next month, so we'll see what happens. But I will see you guys in the next book video coming to you shortly. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye, guys.